gonna win it? Maybe. Still under quarantine. It's Gridiron 360. What's happening, D?
What's going on, B?
All right. We've got Dave and Bill. We're doing our 2020 NFL draft prospects. Continuing down the path in the Southeastern Conference and on the defensive side of the ball. We've covered the entire offense. We've covered the big boys on the D-line. Now we shift back a nub, and we'll hit the linebackers inside, outside. We'll identify them. Obviously, there's a few guys that are tweeners that we kind of talked about during the edge. Clavon Chason being one of them from LSU. But we talked about them during the edge, so they will not be reiterated here. These are the guys in the SEC that are eligible, whether it be inside or outside at linebacker for this year's draft. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling. We'll start right out the top. And this guy is probably, he's by a lot of counts, the top linebacker in this draft in terms of, well, they have him as outside. I don't know. He's not the top. Isaiah Simmons is the top, depending on where you want to slot him.
One thing we got to do is, in the NFL now, the basic base fronts are going to be 3-4 and 4-3. Truth is, many people are playing a 4-2-5 as more of their base features. So you're seeing a lot more hybrid players, depending upon where they want to go. We tried to group this as best we could in the old school functional ways. But anyway, so just as we do this, we just we separated them this way. So be it.
All right. So one of the top linebackers in this year's draft is LSU's Patrick Queen. He is he's from Ventress, Louisiana, a junior at 6 foot, 229 pounds, 31 5/8 inch arms, 10-inch hands, ran a 4.5 40, only threw up 18 reps on the bench. Not great, but he's not as big as some of the big boys. But at linebacker, you do have to fight with some of the big boys on the offensive line. So I do like to see maybe a little more strength there. We'll see as it goes. A lot of folks are giving him a comp to Mr. Thomas Davis, formerly of the University of Georgia.
Mind you, another converted safety, just to give you an idea of how the game is evolving.
Yep. He had good games this year against some of the top competition. When you're talking my Clemson Tigers, as well as Oklahoma in the postseason, Queen showed up. He was involved also during the Georgia game, which was the SEC championship game. And the reason I mentioned that, those are 3 games back-to-back, basically postseason, games of importance. Talk about competitive toughness a lot. We do. This is a guy that definitely appeared to bring the level of his game up when the competition and when the game was quite frankly at a higher level.
Yeah, this guy played inside at LSU on their front. He's not really looked at as an odd front, just given his size. Size kind of reminds me a little bit of Roquan, a smaller size a linebacker. Probably more what I'm seeing as I kind of look through, a little bit more of a fit for like a weak side and a 4-man front type linebacker. He's a great tackler, like tackling, and I picked up and saw this when I saw him play. You need those guys in those fronts to be able to get there and tackle. He's got some wheels on him, so he can go out there and cover in those fronts a little bit more. You're going to see, because obviously you don't see a lot of DNs in the 4-3 drop off into coverage like you would in a 3-4. But that's kind of like from a size comparison. That's high praise. I don't know if he's not a top 10 guy in this draft, but I think he's a legit first rounder, and I think he's a type of day one starter in the right scheme.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, he is fast, and in doing so, he's able to, as a linebacker, if he's not lined up right on the line, he's got to have an offensive line come get him, particularly in run blocking. He's fast enough to evade the blocker. In terms of offense, the question is, I guess, if they get his hands on him and he's not able to evade him, I've seen him struggle. So that's going to be something he needs to work on. One of the things that he also had was a lot of really good dudes around him at LSU. I don't want to necessarily say it's it's like we've went before with the who made who.
Yep.
But I do think he benefited a lot from those hosses they had on the D line to help him kind of stay clean. He's got good eyes. He can read the ball. He's great at tracking it or anticipating where it's going to go and getting there with his speed. But again, that's assuming he doesn't have a big offensive lineman in his face with his hands on him. If that happens, there could be a little struggle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see him fitting in that kind of situation where he's going to have to come with that a lot. So I think that's just an opportunity for him, again, going back to that 4-3. So, I mean, again, I go back to this guy is old school in the sense of he's traditional to me. You don't see a lot of traditional linebackers. You talked about the best probably linebacker out there is going to be Isaiah Simmons, but that's a guy that you're like, you almost devise a scheme around a guy like that, where this is a guy that fits into an existing scheme already. He's compact, so he's not a tall guy. So it's not like he's sitting there with a weakness in weight. He's an aggressive tackler, like meaning he will drive and go at the ball and go at the guy, and he's sound in his technique, which is nice to see. Because, some of these guys, I think with some of their athleticism, especially some of the more talented guys, the guys that stand out, sometimes they're not as sound with the tackling and those fundamental basics just because they don't have to be as much.
Sure.
But that can also lead them to give up bad plays at times because they rely on their athleticism so much. This guy's kind of he's the mold. He's cookie cutter in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, they've had some good linebackers come out of LSU that are doing all right. Devin White seems to be a good player.
Yep.
Quan Alexander, pretty good player. Deion Jones, that was that went over to the Falcons. He's not the best, but he's a good player. He's fast, hits hard. He's definitely, again, as I said in that competitive toughness, this guy also has seemed to progress in his career. In 18. He was played in 13 games, had 40 tackles, 5 for loss, 1 sack, and then he went into the postseason and he had 9 tackles in the Fiesta Bowl, 2 for loss against Central Florida, and then you come to this present year and he posted, 12 of 15 games he played, 85 tackles, 12 for loss, 3 sacks, an interception, 2 pass breakups. So he has progressed. He definitely seems to rise to the occasion when you're talking big type games and you really need him to come into play. So I think he's going to be real. I mean, in a line of some good linebackers that are coming out of LSU, this is a guy that I think falls right in suit with those and will have a good career in the NFL, assuming, as with all, that he's in the right system, right coach.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm looking at this, and these days it's really hard to take much from this. But he's a guy that, as we talk about, is all the scouts are looking at him as a traditional 3-4-3 linebacker. But the teams that he's met with, interestingly, are the Packers, the Eagles, and the Ravens. And I think about the Ravens as one. He doesn't quite fit that role, but as a inside linebacker in a 3-4, does seem a little bit light, but I don't know, kind of interesting. But again, this is a lot of these teams miss windows to see people, so
yeah.
And sometimes that's all just a show on top of it. So this draft is going to be weird from all points. So
well, that is definitely for certain. It's going to be different than we've seen in quite some time.
Yep.
Let's move on to the next guy. And rival Alabama Crimson Tide in the SEC West, and that is Mr. Anthony Jennings from Dadeville, Alabama, a redshirt senior. This is a guy who's played a lot of ball at Alabama, whose name has been called a lot, has had a pretty good career there. He's 6'2", 256, 32 7/8 inch arms, 9 1/8 inch hands. Don't have any kind of combine numbers here for him, but this is a guy that they actually, some places have him as an edge, but again, outside linebacker is what we're listing him at. Good player, man. I'll tell you, we played these guys a lot in the postseason the past 3-4 years, and this guy, when he was there, was definitely an involved piece of their defense.
Yeah, I mean, he was a first-team All-SEC selection. You know, you talk about, you know, sometimes the fronts that they run behind and how much does that help and protect them and how do they play. I mean, this is a guy that racked up 83 tackles last year.
That's a lot, baby.
And also had 12 tackles for loss and 8 sacks. Those are career highs for him during his time at Alabama. Linebackers have always been a curious thing for me out of Alabama. There's been several of them that have underperformed. It's usually a position that they get very high school recruits out of, meaning they get a lot of 5-star, high 4-star guys. It's competitive, but it's weird. I kind of seen instances where I don't know whether it's they've been helped by the front or whether they've been, and when this would not be the year I would look at Alabama as getting a lot of help from the front compared to some other years where they've had some seriously stacked D-lines, but I don't know whether it's they get beat up a little bit like the running backs we always talk about at Alabama, having a lot of wear on their tires. But this is a guy, though, that just, again, he could come from the edge. He's definitely got the size. He's obviously putting up 8 sacks is pretty impressive. He intercepted a pass and also broke up 5 others. Like, this guy's kind of got a lot going for him, and at the same time, I say there are some Alabama linebackers that haven't really lived up to the hype. There are several that have. So, you know, this guy could kind of be, I don't want to call him a hidden gem because he's not going to be hidden, but he's pretty, he's a pretty athletic guy, and I think that's going to be, and at his size, that's pretty impressive.
Sure. And, this is a guy, they had some issues on the inside with their linebackers all year long due to injury. Again, inside, this guy's more the outside guy. I think the biggest concern might be his size, and can he play correctly with his size and not get caught too vertical, being able to play quick and fast and use his eyes to get to the ball rather than, maybe indecisiveness in terms of where the ball is going, getting in the right gap. Again, he's a bigger guy of these folks. So, you want to make sure that if you're using him more in that outside linebacker role in like a 3-4, that he's able to use that size correctly and not get caught flat-footed standing up too straight.
Yeah, he's an attacker. Probably some of his weaknesses will come in like coverage and areas like that, and being able to read and react as opposed to sending him upfield quickly or sending him to attack on the ball. Like, that's his strong suit. So he's
powerful guy.
Yeah, he's gonna have to get better at that because teams are gonna throw you off balance and require you to do the things you're not comfortable with. So, I think he'll be a thumper. I think he's solid in the run game. He will, because he's got that reach and that size to him, but he needs to, is gonna have to develop, I think those finer skills, and I think that's what kind of, based off everything that I read about him and I've seen him play, he looks like a man among boys, kind of.
Yeah,
he's got
he
that
does.
size, but can he develop those finer skills, and that both being in playing in space, but also, good pass rushing skills if they're going to bring him off the edge and being more complete in that area seems to be the areas he's got to look at.
Sure. I think, what did you say? How many pass breakups?
Afinski.
He
had 5.
That's a good bit, dude.
Yep.
I got to tell you something, dude. That this is extremely important, especially in today's NFL, with the ball coming out quickly, underneath routes, little quick routes. A lot of quarterbacks throwing with maybe more velocity but less arc on the ball, which is okay. But that arc doesn't allow it to get overhand. So that swatting pass is a very, very good talent to have. It's a very good talent to have, especially if you're an edge guy or an outside guy and you can't get there in time or you get caught up, to have that awareness of the ball coming out of the hands and getting the hand up. I love that, dude. I really love that.
If you really look at the best pass rushers in the NFL, they don't just disrupt by getting their hands on the quarterback or, creating that pressure. They disrupt by being in passing lanes and being able to that's where you really see that next level skill on people, is where they can, when a lineman gets their hands on them, can they create enough disruption even if they can't get there, as you just mentioned, and be able to know when to get their hands up. you see bull rushers put their head down, and so therefore they lose sight of where the ball's going and what's coming out and what the quarterback's doing. The guys that can keep their head up, which is a challenge because you have to have the base strength to do that. But if you can keep your hands up, that is incredibly disruptive part. Just even getting, you think about it, like you just said, quick passing game, quick slants, giving the quarterback the idea that you're coming at him and they think you're blocked, and all of a sudden your hands are in the air, and that just disrupts everything. So if he can continue to develop that, that's a major characteristic that probably gets overlooked for the fact that people look at the stats of sacks and quarterback hurries, those kind of things.
Right.
That's a very different thing when you are blocked, being able to do that.
Yeah,
and that's
I think
impressive.
That's a great thing. A great thing. You might get into a situation where you have that quick passing game or a really good offensive line. Maybe you just can't. They don't. You just can't get there. To have that, that's awesome. All right, let's move on to the next guy. Also from the SEC West, and he's listed as an interior linebacker. Again, Patrick Queen and Anthony Jennings were listed as outside. This guy's listed inside from the LSU Tigers, hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. A junior. Jacob Phillips at 6'3", 229, 32 3/8-inch arms, 10-inch hands, ran a 4.66 at the combine, 20-yard, doesn't show bench, 20-yard shuttle 4.33, which is, again, as you slowly move back position-wise, that the 40 becomes more important as you move backward. You move forward, I think it's those shuttles and those cone drills that are really more telling. But this is right in between as a linebacker. Let's see. He was the guy, we just mentioned one of the great linebackers that came out of LSU last year, Mr. Devin White. This is the guy that went in and took over for him in the middle at LSU.
Yep. Played next to him the year before, but took over for his role.
There's something that's all big shoes to fill. Started all 15 games this last year in the middle. He was the team leader in tackles with 113, 7.5 for loss. Yeah.
I got to tell you, who this guy reminds me of? I'm gonna give, and you know me, I always go back to my what I know the best, which is my Bears comparison.
It's good.
All right, so I got one for you. I want to look at a guy, Nick Kwiatkowski. Okay.
There's been a lot of talk about Kwiatkowski.
Now, but here's the point. That's kind of the point. This guy, 113 tackles, 7.5 for loss, playing in the middle, which is, you're not going to get as much tackle for loss as playing in the middle in that defense. But when they bring him up, he does it. This guy is a consummate football player, but he's not flashy. He's not exciting. He's not going to stand out necessarily, but he's going to be very sound and sure. And what I see of him is, he's a high-level prospect, but a lot of people talk about him being like special teams and being more of that sure tackler, which I could definitely see. But that's who Nick Kwiatkowski was. And all of a sudden, this guy gets, he's up against Trevathan, who's been a Pro Bowler for the Bears, and Kwiatkowski goes and gets a big contract with the Raiders to start. And how he did that was playing on special teams, and the Bears had some injuries, and he got backup, he got the backup role and started some games and proved himself to be a very good tackler. So while this guy might not come out and just blow the doors off you and flash at you, he's a guy in 3 to 4 years who, if he learns the game and becomes a student of it, which is very much what Kwiatkowski did. He was a 4th rounder out of West Virginia, not a prolific defensive school. And he went and did that. Like, he kind of reminds me of that type of player that maybe early on might not be like this flash, this guy you're bringing in as a tackling machine, but then all of a sudden learns the nuances of the game. And I love sure tacklers. In the NFL, that's the most infuriating thing to watch.
You say Kwiatkowski, and I the guy that's...
You probably got guys like that.
The guy I'm thinking of is Leighton Vander Esch. That's who I'm thinking of. Not as a hair smaller in height, a good bit smaller in weight, but you're talking about a sound tackler, somebody that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. If you see him make a mistake, it's probably not going to make the same mistake twice, at least in a game.
Yep.
You're right. He's a he's a guy that can cover on special teams, so he's definitely got a role right out the gate. If you draft him, you're pretty sure that you're going to get a guy that's he's not new to that, and one of the things that, I saw is that you said it, sure tackler. Didn't miss many tackles when it was his job, and obviously he had a boatload. So that I like that. Man.
It's just one of those where like in the draft, everybody wants to scream athleticism. Like that's what everybody wants is this ridiculous athleticism. He might not bring that, but there's a lot of guys that I've seen. You want to talk about the Bears? How about go to Mike Singletary? That dude was tiny in the middle linebacker, and he ended up because he was such a sure tackler. Now, again, that's probably an unfair comparison, but it's just, a guy that was undersized. There was like, do we take him? Do we take him? I mean, I remember watching stories about him, and I got to tell you, I watch that dude play all the time. Beast.
Badass.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is guy, again, I think you hit it right. Look, you don't have to be a freak athletically to play this game if you've got, if you just have natural abilities, instincts, your head's right.
Yep.
And tackling, especially in the NFL, is so important. You could be the biggest freak athletically, but have terrible technique in terms of tackling. Okay? Yep. When you have a guy that might be not a freak athletically, but you can count on him to make that tackle, man, there's a lot of guys on my New York Giants that weren't that I'd like to have, that you're like, holy crow, how did that little running back just bounce off my big-ass linebacker, because he couldn't make a tackle. Can't stand that.
Yeah, he might play next to your Pro Bowler that's very athletic and can do things that other people can't do, but when those guys take chances, this is the kind of guy you need cleaning up the mess. And so I think he's got some potential. Again, I see him probably – I've seen him in the top 50 recruits. I don't know if I see him going that high, just because I think there's going to be some emphasis on athleticism in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
We talked about the depth of some of the positions like wide receiver and running back that might garner some more of that. But I could see him going in the 3rd round. And again, you get a 3rd rounder and you get a guy that you can immediately put on special teams and is your backup middle linebacker. You're in good shape with this guy, I think.
Yeah,
I think
1,
it's a
2,
good
3, 4, 5. He's kind of a lot of the boards have him in terms of at the inside linebacker position around the 6th overall listed, roughly 5, 6, 7 around that, depending on where you're looking in terms of inside linebacker. So I agree with you. I think that he could definitely go on late, maybe day 2, but I'm thinking maybe 3rd, 4th round. I think a solid 3rd rounder. I think you've got, if you get this guy in the 3rd round, no matter where, I think that's a really almost a steal. That's a great pickup. Yep. If he's still there. So, all right, let's move on to one more guy, and then we'll dice and slice and talk about some more so we can keep this snackable. All right. Last guy we're going to talk about on this segment is listed as an outside linebacker from Mississippi State, actually from Starkville, a junior, Mr. Willie Gay Jr. at 6'1", 243, 32 and 5/8 inch arms, 10.5-inch hands, ran a 4.46 at the combine, a 4.3 20-yard shuttle.
A 4.46?
4.46.
Yep.
So that's pretty darn. That's much faster than the guys we just said. 21 reps at the bench. So, that's probably a little closer to where we're expecting from these guys. Looking to see if they've got a comp. I don't see it. This is a guy that was... coming out of high school was very, very highly touted as a recruit. Okay. I think he got into a little trouble, didn't he?
Yeah.
He had some academic troubles. I think that was his
multiple suspensions.
Yeah.
Here's this guy. Remember how I was just talking about how his name started to really blow up?
Reportedly, Willie Gay and their Miss State starting quarterback Garrett Schrader also got into an altercation late in the year. Yeah, you don't. Want that.
I remember that. I remember that.
I do remember that now that I read it, and yeah.
Yeah, but some people, if I remember that story correctly, and I don't, I think
the one
he
that
kind of
egging him on.
Yeah. But here's the thing with this guy. This is the anti what I was just talking about with like Jacob Phillips and even Jennings, but mostly to Phillips is this is the guy that's super athletic and relies on his athleticism, and it gets him into trouble at times. But if you see this guy's highlight reel, and you just said, guy ran a 4.46, He's not a featherweight. He's 240. So he's not on the lighter end. I mean, linebackers now are in the mid 230s, even sometimes down in the high 220s. So this is a guy, but look at his stats. That concerns me, is that he's very inconsistent. His stats are not terribly consistent and impressive overall. But like, he's the kind of guy you watch his highlight tape and you go, oh my God. You're like, this guy's a beast.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, with highlight tapes, it's a snippet.
You see their best plays.
Right.
It's their highlights.
Right. So you see the athleticism. I mean, he plays nasty. He hits hard. He gets there fast. But he also is lazy in his technique and doesn't always take, the right technique, the right angle, and it costs him.
That's one thing I saw. His angles.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd think he'd have a beat on the ball, and he's fast, but is he as fast and twitchy as some of these little backs? No, and if he takes a bad angle and they make a move on him, he's left in the dirt.
Yeah,
Got to take good angles in this game.
This is a guy probably that needs the interviews big time. Teams are going to fall in love with him. That I remember his name came up. I mean, unfortunately, it was right as we were getting into Corona season, but at the combine, because all of a sudden he started, surprising some people. Here's the thing: is the NFL will only be so patient with development, particularly with red flags, but also in coachability. Like, you just can't be reckless in the NFL. You can get away with that in college a lot more in your play. And obviously, if there's major concerns, I remember that thing with the quarterback, because I think didn't the quarterback get suspended in that one?
I think so. And I don't think it was academic violations that hurt him this past year. Mind you, it was 8 games this past year he was held out of. It says due to NCAA violations pertaining to an academic tutor. So he probably fondled some young college co-ed that was trying to get him better.
Or maybe he just had someone take a test for him.
Yeah, well, either or. I mean, you can't that, and then you're talking about discrepancies not only with a teammate but with the quarterback.
This guy
that's not going to go very far. If we've seen character issues in guys, just they get to the NFL, they don't know how to handle it, and it becomes like these character issues. If they don't get better, if he doesn't commit right going in, getting better, it just escalates at an astronomical rate sometimes.
Yeah, to me,
you can't do it if you go into a job right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Things you might have done in college, working or something. When you go into a job for your career, they're not looking to spend time on you as an individual so much. They will. There's millions of dollars invested in these guys, so they do have the sources. It's not really what they want to have to do, okay?
No.
They want you to grow up, be a man. This is now a job. Treat it like it and act your age.
And the truth is, unless you are, like, let's just look at it this way. AB is probably sheer talent, is probably a top 4 guy in the NFL at receiver. And even there was a level of tolerance that was surpassed by him. The rookies are not going to get that move. This guy, if you want to define this guy, I'll define this guy in 3 words: boom or bust. This guy is the ultimate boomer bust.
Yeah.
There is athleticism, there is things to like, and then there's those WTFs on there that you're just like, what's going on?
Just like Phillips, I think he's 3rd, 4th round type talent potentially. However, if someone sees the game tape and it falls in love with him, he could go sometime maybe late in the second, and then because again, maybe they see boom, we can make it a boom. I know we can make it a boom with this kid. And if it doesn't work out, then it is a complete fail.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Obviously, given the talent that I've seen I was watching his highlights before we kind of got going here. I'd love to see the guy put it together because, we like freak athletic players.
Yeah.
Even though this is an offensive league, I will tell you I am a defensive person. I love defense more than I love offense. I hate what they're stealing away from me in some of the games. I get the player safety, but I like to see somebody get some snot bubbles every now and then.
Yes.
So
yes.
I appreciate the defense.
It's good. All right. We're going to wrap this one up, and we'll probably cut another 4 guys each. Keep it snackable. This one went a little longer, right at about, I think, 30. But these are the top guys. At linebacker in the SEC for the 2020 NFL Draft, Dyson and Slicing. See you soon on The gridiron. Woo!